Welcome to the 10th video in this series of how to draw realistically. Obviously, we've got a lion specifically for this particular video. So if you can watch the first video that will go over the techniques in much greater detail. But they are techniques that allow you to see a reference photo in a different way. Plus, the first video will go through a little test that is really designed to show you that you really can do this as long as you're looking at a reference photo differently. So let's get started. So what I always do is have the reference photo printed out in such a size that it's not going to be too challenging, it's not too big, it's not too small. I've got it also placed as close as humanly possible to where I'm going to start drawing. So I'm trying to figure out this first point that I'm going to decide, so the first mark. And what I've decided is to first put down where his left eye is, so the eye that's furthest on the page towards the right, but his left. That eye that really doesn't have much detail to it, it looks like a little triangle. Sometimes you can put your hand out there and get a little bit of a reference point to, make that decision as to where it is. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that you're not going to go off the page if in fact you want to include everything that the reference photo has. So you've got this particular amount of space that you need to allocate for. So I'm going to have that first mark, be way over on the right so that I've got enough space from that mark to the left to be able to go all the way to, the left of where the reference photo is. If I had picked like the center of the page, then I wouldn't have enough space from that first initial marking towards the left to be able to get all I wanted to get in. Now it's different if you just want to draw the lion's head. So just be sure that you're making decisions whereby you're going to be able to include everything that you want to include from the reference photo. So moving along here and putting in a little bit more detail, trying to figure out the measurements. So you've got that measurement from his eye, his left eye again, to his forehead, and then from his eye to the tip of his nose. And what I noticed is that those particular measurements, the one from his eye to like the top of his head, is very similar to the measurement from his eye to the tip of his nose. So if you're noticing in your drawing that one of those particular measurement decisions is way shorter or way longer, then you got to get out the eraser and something has happened. It's just a way of using your own drawing as kind of a way of checking yourself. I also noticed that that exact measurement is very similar to what the measurement from the tip of his nose to his chin is, save for a little bit of those whiskers that kind of curve on his chin. But so all of those measurements are relatively similar to each other, and you can do that, of course, with a lot of other sections of the reference photo where you kind of compare and contrast. Am I getting these measurements correct as they compare to other measurements that I've already decided upon? So you've got these measurements here, and they're also, in addition to them being a measurement length decision, they're also a decision of what angle they're going to be at. And so I really went over this in the first video where you've got this reference and you're just imagining this, and it is a reference of a perfect vertical angle of 90 degrees and a perfect horizontal angle of 0 degrees. So you've got this reference point, and this really just allows you to be able to compare the angles you've come up with, obviously with your reference photo, but sometimes it is helpful to compare it to like a standard, in this case a perfect vertical, perfect horizontal. So it really comes in handy when you've got certain angles that are a little bit close. If you take this angle from his nose to his chin, you can tell it's more similar to the vertical angle, obviously, than the horizontal angle. But if you take angles that are a little bit more subtle, where they're very close to the horizontal or very close to the vertical, it can just give you that second reference point that your brain might need in order to let you know, is this as accurate as it could be? Like you've got this angle of his right paw that is slightly tipped up, so it's not quite perfectly horizontal. It is at such an angle that at first glance you could potentially make the mistake that it is perfectly horizontal. But in reality, when you compare it to that perfect 0 degrees, you can tell that it's not quite exactly where that perfect horizontal line is. So if you're noticing in your drawing that you've got that right paw depicted at a perfect flat horizontal angle, you know you need to get out the eraser. Doesn't seem like something that is incredibly important, and maybe for that right paw it isn't, but for areas of emphasis like his face, particularly his right eye, that prominent eye, it comes into play and is extremely important into trying to successfully, realistically draw anything. So continuing to put in some value and a whole bunch of little measuring decisions. And with reference to his two eyes, you've got this first eye here, and really was the first mark of the entire drawing. In reference to his other eye, which is really the prominent eye, it's the area of emphasis. And if you take like a horizontal line, imagining a horizontal line at this point, bring it down, that's where that eye is, that first mark. You take another horizontal line, that's where his second eye is. You can tell that they don't line up, whereas at first glance you might think that they're kind of on the same plane as far as that horizontal 0 degrees. When in reality there is an angle there, the relationship between the two eyes that you need to pay attention to. And when then compared to that perfect 0 horizontal degree angle, you can tell that it is quite different, even though it's a very small margin. If you were to correct that and make it horizontal, according to the reference photo, it would not be accurate. So it's a whole bunch of decisions like this that will really enable you to draw better, as far as, or more accurately, in a realistic way. So filling in quite a bit of value here in his mane and in his face. And another technique which I've used a lot during this particular drawing is blurring your vision on purpose, where you're squinting and you're getting your eyelashes in front of your eyes. And it kind of reduces your drawing to where you can see these obvious points of dark and light, and like his chin there, and part of his mane. Obviously the back of his mane is a much darker section. You got this shadow on his face. But what it does is it kind of gives your brain a bit of a rest, or a bit of a break from looking at this like it's a line, and instead it kind of reduces it to a whole bunch of lights and darks, and maybe you can see the shapes a little bit more accurately. Things seem to pop out in a more obvious way when you blur your vision. And again, you're doing that by getting your eyelashes in front of your eyes and blurring your vision on purpose so as to look at your reference photo in a completely different way. So moving right along here, putting in more value, a little bit more detail. Got the whiskers in there and his face. And another technique I did was I used to try to get some of those highlights, a really small, and this just came with the mechanical pencil, eraser to try to flesh out a little bit of those highlights that that sun is really kind of bringing out in his mane. And another thing I did was using my ring finger, got into a little bit of the darker area of the drawing, and you're not going to mess it up by doing that. And then just kind of fleshing out the background. I didn't want to go through the process of drawing that fence or the tree. I didn't think it would look right, but instead kind of suggesting this out of focus sky by taking my finger and just kind of smudging using some of that graphite to go back there and just, give your eyes something to look at so that it's not just completely white. And then going back in with the eraser and continuing to work a little bit. You can go back and forth on this where you're applying value and then removing it with an eraser. Try to get that accurate blend. So there you have it. That is lesson 10 in this series on how to draw realistically. Like I say, the first video will really go over the techniques in much greater detail. Also show you that anybody can really do this. You just need the determination and the ability to look at a reference photo differently. So be sure and check out that video. Check out the second and third channel. And hopefully there will be another video in this series. Thanks for watching.